Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the USA Rugby Clubhouse, brought to you by the rugbyshop.com for all your rugby apparel needs. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Petrie, joined by a very deflated, probably, Ben Foden after a tough weekend against the Comeback Kids. Oh, folks. Oh, man. What a week 14, though. Like, genuinely. I mean, you're shaking your head, so disappointed, obviously, because it didn't go your way. But, I mean, with the exception of one game this past weekend, every other game was decided by less than 5 points, I think. I mean, it's like you're playing for everything now. And there was some of the best games that we could have asked for as far as the season goes happened this past weekend. I mean, having been there on the sideline at the New York-Utah game, that was unbelievable. I mean, that was just incredible. I'm a New York fan, folks. You know that I'm big.
But I know that you're a Utah fan as well, because I'm a Utah fan. Although I did not enjoy that game of rugby whatsoever. I mean, the pace of it, the way it was ref. I think that Utah came with a very good plan of how they were going to win that game, and they executed it perfectly. They took all the pace out of the game, meant they had massive players, massive set piece, really got into us. We lost a few key players to injuries, no excuses, and then they just kept themselves in it. And when Utah are in it with 5 or 10 minutes to go, they have a way of winning, and annoyingly so. 1 point. There's nothing worse than losing by a point, but it's annoying for us because that could have been the game that put us at the top of the league, sort of thing, and probably put that little bit of distance between us and the other games. Instead, New York are in a street fight, as we always like to be in, and I think it's going to go right to the end as well, because we play NOLA in the last game of the season. So it's going to be a tough couple of weeks to see out the season. But, and the other thing as well, Utah beating New York, I think, as obviously I gave them the commentator's curse, as completely severed San Diego's chances of making the top 2 now as well. I think them losing to LA Guiltinis has sort of been the nail in the coffin, and they'll be looking at it thinking it's too big of a gap to bridge now. And to be fair, LA were there for the taking. They had a lot of injuries, a lot of stars missing. It looked like it was the week for San Diego to do it, but LA turned it on, and they won like they always find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And LA for me is still the number one dogs. Although we beat them and Atlanta beat them, I still think they're the best team out there at the moment.
Well, there's a will, there's a way. The one team that really, really lives by that is the Warriors, man. I mean, I agree with you that LA is looking good, but I mean, Utah this weekend, so I was doing the sideline for the game, as you know, so I was there hanging out with Dan Power and Brian Hightower, which is a lot of fun, and I enjoy that. But I had a chance. I called Sean Davies, the assistant coach at Utah Warriors this week. I've played with both Sean Pittman and Sean Davies. And
you haven't mentioned that once on this show. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've heard about it.
There's my other claim to fame. Then I played with both of those guys. But I called Sean and I said, "Hey man, how's it going? Congratulations! Everything seems to be going really well for you out in Utah. We're looking forward to having you here in New York. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on." And he said to me, this was Thursday, and he said, "We're going out with a very strong bench." Right. And he said, "We're picking a strong bench. We think that if we rest Mika Cruze and we rest Mikey Teo and we bring those guys on late and we're still in the game at the 60-minute mark, we're going to win." Right. And I said, that's pretty bold. Right. And I remember talking to some of the guys in New York, and they said, "Well, risky because you've got to be in the game at the 60-minute mark for that to work." Right. But I went to Sean at halftime. I was trying to get some input for the sideline reporting. I was like, give me something to work with going into the next half. And, from the New York side, it was, we've got to get our scrums right. We've got to get our scrums right. Right. We've got to get organized around the breakdown. We've really got to tidy up some of the loose ends. And Sean just looked at me and smiled, and he's like, "We're exactly where we want to be. This is fantastic. We're great."
Yeah, that's the thing. As a coach, you sort of rub your hands and go, "I love it when a plan comes together." But I'm telling you, Mikey, when I was playing the game, one of the things that we said is we need to lift the tempo. They've got big forwards. You can see they have big, heavy forwards. You need to move the ball around. And we just couldn't.
just the tempo of the scrum, and listen, the scrum is always a coin toss, but they dominated the first 2 scrums. In the referee's head, they were like, that scrum's dominant, that scrum's winning. So every time it went down, it was Utah. And our penalty count was in the 20s, and theirs was at 9. Do you know what I mean? And if you're doing double the penalties, it was disappointing because, when we did have the ball and we did move around, we scored some cool tries, and it looked like we were going to dominate the game. But like their tacticians and their mastermind said, if they're in it for 60, they sent on the boys. Mika Cruz scores the vital try. Mike Uteo sets up the quick tap and puts the 10 on. They were very simple mistakes that we made, but credit to them. They went there with a plan and they executed very well. And they are a dangerous side. They have dangerous players, big, heavy forwards with a good set piece. So hats off to them. And the other game that didn't go our way is the Toronto-Nola game. Very tight, but Nola got the win that they needed, putting more pressure on us to go and win now as well. So that one's sort of thrown a spanner in the works. And even worse, Mikey, is this week we play Toronto before they lose all their players. And we were supposed to play them on Sunday. And the good-natured people that we are at New York said we can move it to Saturday so you can keep all your players, because all their players would fly out on the Sunday. So that could bite us in the arse as well, because Toronto aren't a walkover, and they gave us a good hiding last time we met. So it was a close game.
I was wondering. I saw that note come up about the game getting moved. So credit. That's fair play to you guys, man. Fair play. You want to play a team. You want to play the Arrows at their best. Come on.
At their best, yeah. I'm surprised we're not going to Canada, to be honest. But no, they look good out there. I thought for a team that's traveled all the way to Atlanta to play Toronto, I thought they looked pretty strong. I know it was pretty close, only 1 score in it, but I think Nola were winning at half time, and then that was it. They were always winning, and it just never sort of seemed like Toronto were going to get back in front. So Nola saw it out, and it was quite an interesting game to watch. But yeah, very much Nola in the thick of things between New York, Nola, Atlanta. I think Nola and us have a game in hand against Atlanta, who played at the weekend as well. They played against Houston, a weakened Houston team. Obviously, Houston didn't do us any favors, so it was another run out for Atlanta, who scored 33 points against 15. Atlanta, they look good. Strong in set piece, strong players as usual. Houston, I think we've talked about Houston enough. They're in the rebuilding phase. So yeah, Atlanta look very much still in it. I'm not sure when their bye week will be, because they've had 1 more extra game than everyone. So if we win our extra game, we go ahead of them. Or we'd have to win with a bonus point, and we go ahead of them. Is that right? And Nola need to win with a bonus point, and they'll be 2 points behind them or something. So it's very close to the Eastern Conference. I'm not sure. We need to start looking at the run-in, who we've got left to play, because I think that's what's going to be key, isn't it? I think the Nola game at the end of the season, us against Nola, is going to be a key one. That's at our home. We play the Freejacks in 2 weeks' time. That's a big one.
Fodes. Do you remember in the first year that we were in the MLR and we had that last game of the season against Nola out in Coney Island? And it was one of those, had to win it to advance sort of thing. Yeah. And the end of the game, we were winning. At the end of the game, I went to kick the ball.
Oh my God, yeah. I remember you kicked it and it went 40 meters behind us. Yeah. And we were like sprinting back trying to kick it out. Jesus, Mikey. I do remember. Yeah. Yeah, you think you've won it. Your experienced halfback slows it all down. Don't worry, lads, I've got it. And then shanks a kick 40 meters behind us, and we're all chasing.
I think it was Kyle Sumption that saved me, or was it you or Kyle Sumption?
I think
somebody just saved me. And I remember I was like, I couldn't breathe for a second. I wanted to just throw up. I was like, oh my.
Yeah, because if it had gone wrong, that would have been one of those moments that had lived with you forever.
But we made it through, so who knows? Could be more of the same. Hopefully, it ends a little bit better for you guys than that. A little bit more comfortable, but it set us up with the semifinal away in San Diego that year. So
it did. Yeah. Well, I don't think there's going to be a San Diego, because I mentioned that the LA beat San Diego in San Diego, which is quite surprising, really, because San Diego. Did you see that Chris Robshaw's on his shoulder again as well?
No, I didn't see that.
Nightmare, yeah, done his shoulder again. So I think that'll be him done for the year. But I know that he's on a 2-year deal, so we'll see him back next year, and he'll bounce back. And he's just had a baby as well, so he'll probably have a little bit of time off. Him and his missus can go and see some sights in San Diego, chill out, and enjoy enjoy what the city has to offer. LA, Billy Meeks as well played in the back row at one point because they had so many injuries. Man of many talents, but suppose I heard that he'd done that back in Australia a few times. So always had a bit of seven in him. So and he got man of the match as well, I think. So a man of many talents.
It's that time of the year, right? It's just that time of the year. We're 14 weeks into the season. I mean, teams are going to be hurting. I mean, we've been playing week in and week out since what, March or April or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you're going way back now. And so we talked about this earlier on in the season that, you know, from week one, we said the team that has the best depth, the best versatility, those are going to be the teams that persevere. Right?
Yeah.
And you look at a team like LA had to drop 4 of their starters right before the game, including right, Gito and GTH from what I saw, right?
Yeah.
So 2 players that couldn't play, but other players slotted in brilliantly. It was a huge game for them. And they walk away with a win on the road in San Diego. And that was San Diego's first game back at their home stadium as well.
Did you see Ryberg's try as well? Poor old JP on the cover tackle.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I did see that.
Rugby 101, don't go high on Ryberg. That guy is a powerhouse. And he just got swatted away like a fly. Poor JP.
He's like a freight train for sure.
He is. He really is. And then probably one of the most surprising games, the Austin-Seattle game, was a real close one, a humdinger. And Seattle threw away points again. Interceptions.
I know.
Through the middle, intercept. They threw away some horrible tries. And that's been the story of Seattle.
Fling through the legs near your goal line can't possibly be in the playbook. I don't know that's a playbook play.
Exactly. And that's one of the things. Seattle have been in a lot of games this year, right at the end. They missed a penalty against us. Utah the other week, they scored in the last second. Now this one against Austin with intercepts and balls through the legs. Do you know what I mean? They're a team that they've been desperate to lose games. Finding new ways to lose games. Like, how can we lose this game this week?
If you were 1-13 or 1-12 or whatever it is, like they won one game, right? Like, you'd probably be chucking the ball around saying,
no, have some fun. You know, let's have some fun.
Tap the ball through my legs. Maybe we could score a 100-meter try. Let's see what happens. We'll go. No? Let's just give it a shot. Whatever.
Yeah, but like you said, all very close fixtures. Atlanta running away against Houston, who are rebuilding, but everything else was very tight. What's it meant? It means Austin's still very much in it. They got a bonus point that they needed. Atlanta with the bonus point as well. Obviously, LA winning again. So it's going to be between Utah and Austin. I think Utah are a little bit ahead, a little bit of breathing room. I think they'll be, bloody delighted that they came to us and won and rested players and got that into some of their guys as well. So I think it was the best result for Utah this week. I think they'll be team of the week when everyone looks at everything. But, enough of me moping around and Mikey talking about it. Let's take a look at this week's highlights brought to you by the US MLR.
And as far as Utah goes, you got to keep it in the forwards. Make an aggressive.
Talking of aggressive, how about that line from Thakabalavu? He has been shredding Major League Rugby in the last few weeks. Add that one to his hit list. Another try for this Fijian sensation for New York.
Had a difficult start to the season, and a lot of that has to do with the distance he had to travel. Kind of isolated, very homesick. And now he's really settled. You cannot let your guard down if you're New York.
Well, Brian, you and I called the game in Utah against DC. The last play of the game, 83rd minute. They are the heartbreak kids of Major League Rugby. And they are pushing this ball in the right direction to do it yet again. It's with Williams. Christensen sword side, Crusade! He dots it down, and the Warriors, they've done it again. You could not write this. How do Utah keep stealing these games at the death? Christensen, the youngster.
And then there's a mismatch on the corner, one-on-one, Crusade on the blind side. They identify it well, and Utah, well, we just talked about it. Don't leave them a tick on the clock. And look at the bodies. You can see how difficult it is for them. Talafo jogging back. Nobody covering the corner.
Back with Dominguez, Julian Dominguez. The Buenos Aires native at Club Pucará. Look at Dominguez go. Dominguez still on his feet. Dominguez across and down.
Nice call.
Take another look at the try from Dominguez.
So it's just a kick. He takes it and he goes through and he beats 3 tackles, right? And that's, he is so strong in.
Toronto trying to find something, a little kick through. Right back to Dirksen, read it well, charged down. Here the Arrows with an opportunity. Lesage across and down. The co-captain ties things at 5.
Kicking foot is, and that's Dirksen's right foot, and you can see Lesage covering the right foot with that block. He puts his hand up.
Just outside the 5-meter mark. Kelly, little stab kick through. Mieres giving the chase. He's got it. Try time, Toronto. Will Kelly to Gaston Mieres. We will take our final hydration break. 12 all between Toronto and NOLA. Stick with us.
Goddard, good fake. Goddard's got some space. Harrison Goddard gives it away. Powering on toward the try line and putting it down. What an effort turned in by Los Angeles to finish that play. Great work out of Goddard.
For a second of the game. Looked like Peterson had an angle. You just can't take a man that powerful, that high. 3 players. Iglesias tries it as well.
Seattle still 5 meters out, inching closer to the try line.
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something special against this AG's defense, #1 in the league.
Austin takes such pride in the defense, and they will spin it wide. Did he dot it down? Able to get across, indeed. Inifuti, the American Samoan, signed earlier this month.
AG defenders, and you can see the back for the AG saying, hey, there's space wide. Oh, it's actually Joyce. Joyce with that beautiful left-handed pass.
Getting ready for those tests come early July. Oh, good inside ball. Austin able to find a little space, and it's going to be Austin. Hugh Roach, the former Waratahs man, dots it down, and Austin tacks on another 5.
You can see people aren't coming round, and right here, they knew exactly what was going on, and what a line, and what a support line by Roach. Roach was just standing out here waiting for the ball to come back. That pattern.
I think you're exactly right. I don't know that anyone can take Inifuti one-on-one as Devereaux Ferris comes on at the fullback in place of Aki Yamada.
And another mistake at the kickoff, and let's see what they call. And it's a try. Misfielded there. Looks like by Tamivina. And then great play. You don't have to have possession when the ball's bouncing around. A little bit of work on the ground, making sure that placement is better, will be good for the Seawolves.
Intercepted by Halai. It's Frank the Tank, the former All Black. And Frank dots it down right behind the post.
Beaudein Waaka, New England Freejacks, and you're watching USA Rugby Clubhouse.
So, Mikey, it is my pleasure to introduce our first guest, which means that we've collected every single team in the MLR now because we've been waiting to get the Free Jack boys on. It's a guy who instantly made an impact in the team because he played in the opening game for this team against us in Las Vegas last year during the COVID season. And a game that everyone thought that we were going to win, a game that I wanted to forget because the ball bounced on hit the crossbar. And I remember he raced out and he smoked me and gave me a dead leg after about 30 minutes as well, and nearly killed himself at the same time. But he got man of the match in that performance. He's all the way from New Zealand, played his rugby over there in the Mida 10 before joining the New Zealand Sevens and joining the Sevens circuit and applying his trade over there for a very good Sevens team as well at the time. You were winning all the competitions. And before joining the New England Freejacks, it's Mr. Beaudein Waaka. How are you, boy?
Yeah, how's it? Good, thanks. Good to be on here and joining with you lads.
Cheers, buddy. Yeah, it's great to have you on. And I see that Mr. Utility, when you played against us, you moved from fullback to wing, but I think you were struggling with a little injury. Then the next week, I see they played you at 10.
Yeah, the coach, we were actually waiting on a specialist 10 to arrive from Fiji, and he didn't have much time in the saddle, so he managed to sneak me in I'm just moving down the numbers chain, so you might see me in the forward pack next week. Who knows?
That's the opposite of me. I've gone the other way.
You're moving the wrong way. You're talking to the wrong person. The other day. All right, so Beaudein, before we ask any other questions, I have one for you that I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times. Prestigious rugby family, you've got an impressive resume, but you're not the only person in your family that's done some pretty extraordinary rugby stuff. So, okay, so who has all the rugby clout in your family, you or your sister Stacey?
Once upon a time, it was myself. And then the younger sister, Stacey, obviously, she was actually a netballer. She wanted the netball dream. But once women's rugby became big in New Zealand and the Olympics came about, she joined this rugby program and kind of made a name for herself. So to answer your question, I'm going to have to say it's the little sister. If you look at her resume, she's got more winning medals than I do currently.
But she learned all her skills from you, mate. So yeah, you're
exactly.
Her Wikipedia page wasn't
passing all the skills and the talent she got from you, mate. So don't worry about it. You take a big hand in her success. That's the way you got to play it.
Oh, I make sure she knows about it.
Well, look, hopefully someday yours. So her Wikipedia page has a bunch of medals in it, but hopefully yours soon has US MLR champion, right? Is that what we're going for? US MLR champion.
We're not over here on a holiday. We're obviously here to do a job. So I'm hoping it's going to be USA Rugby MLR champion.
Good answer. Good answer. Especially this week because you're playing NOLA as well. So we need you to beat them as well.
Oh,
your biggest fan right there this weekend, Beaudein. Your biggest fan, Ben Beaudein.
So Beaudein, let's start right at the beginning. Like obviously New Zealand born, so rugby is, it's your heritage. It's through and through over there. When was the first time you picked up a ball and started playing?
I'll just take you back. I was actually born in Australia.
Oh, were you? Were you born in Australia? Oh, I've done my research.
Yes. Yeah, I was actually born in Australia and lived there for about 10 years before actually heading back home for Christmas with Stacey, my little sister. Just the two of us making our way back home to our grandparents. One day we just woke up and said, let's ring mum and dad. We don't want to move back to Australia. So we did. We rang up, said, Mum, Dad, we want to stay with Nan and our koro, grandfather. And they were like, okay, they were all for it. The next year they sold up, packed up and moved back home.
Oh, I thought you could say they were good. They were like, yeah, you can take the kids and we'll stay in Australia and we'll just have a little bit of party lifestyle where the young kids are looked after for a year or so.
Yeah. So the first time I actually picked up a rugby ball would have been probably 1 year old. I always get told the stories. I couldn't leave a rugby ball home. Everywhere I went, whether it was to the shopping market or just down to the shops down the road, a rugby ball was always in my hand and I just couldn't leave it. I always slept with the rugby ball. So I was at a pretty young age.
And did you?
Sounds like basketballs here, man. That's what we need, man. That's what we need. We need more kids walking around sleeping with rugby balls and like walking into shops with rugby balls. Not, the basketballs are great, but we need more American kids doing that. So that's it, Beaudein. I'm glad. I hope people are listening because we need more.
Mike, you get to a sports shop, get to the middle of Times Square, just start handing them out, mate. It's the only way you're going to do it. So obviously you just mentioned you're in Australia to begin with, and then you returned home to the New Zealand, the mecca of rugby. Tell us about your journey through your rugby. Obviously rugby is such a big thing in high school, in schools and stuff. And then obviously, when did it become apparent that, you were good at it and that you could make a living from it? And obviously Mitre 10 came into play and the 7 Series, because you're only still young. You're 26?
27.
27. Okay. You're 27 years old. You still got another, 10 years of rugby left in you?
I hope so.
So tell us about your journey into professional rugby.
Yeah. So it started at quite a young age, and back in New Zealand, we've got good pathways of how to become a professional rugby player, coming through all our JAB, which is our junior All Blacks, at the age of maybe like 10 to 12 years old, and then obviously head into high school. After 2 years at my high school, my primary principal played a big part of my rugby career. He actually got me a scholarship to a rugby boarding school.
Okay.
And so I took that offer, went to a boarding school, which back home in New Zealand is not really a big school amount of kids wise. It's only got a max of maybe 700-800 students at the school. So it's not really a big school, but it actually does well every now and again. And I think I turned up at the right time. And there's this competition called Super 8 where it's between 8 boys schools. And the year I was there, we actually won the competition, first time ever in the school history. They've come close before, but they've always fallen short. And then straight after that, my first 15 coach had some contacts to get me over to a provincial rugby team, which Taranaki Rugby offered a Mitre 10 Cup contract, but I had to leave school a little bit early to join their Sevens Nationals team. You might have heard of it. It's called the Bailey's Sevens Nationals competition. And that was down in Queenstown when it used to go off every year. It was the last time it was there when I played, and we actually won the final, beat North Harbour in the final, which was pretty cool because I was just a kid straight out of school, didn't really know what sevens was, and got approached by the New Zealand coach, Sir Gordon Titchens, and asked if I was available to join him and his development team that went over to Fiji to play Fiji and this Fijian sevens competition, which Australia came over and participated, Tonga, Samoa, and then all the Fijian local club teams. And so that's when I first came about sevens. But I take it back. Taranaki Rugby started my professional rugby career, and I had the likes of Beaudein, Barrett, all those boys with the province as well. So I got to really learn off those guys. Taught me a lot while I was there. They obviously had All Blacks duties, but when they did come in, I always had my notebook out, trying to learn as much as I could. Obviously, I started as a first five leaving school, and he was a person I looked up to. So I tried to gather much information before I actually made the switch to try and make the Olympics, Rio Olympics, and went full-time sevens. Enjoyed my time with the sevens teams. It's such a good experience. You get to travel to 10 different countries a year, and coming from I wouldn't say wealthy family, but we didn't get much growing up, and getting your trips paid for and experiencing the world something I just couldn't believe at the time, and very enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love the sevens as well. I did the sevens for a little bit. It used to be a real pathway for England rugby that you go and play for the England before it went full-time professional. And the same thing, when we were playing, I was playing when I was like 21, 22, and on a crappy contract at Sale Sharks, didn't have much money, and sometimes Emirates would pay for you to be like a business class as well, and you thought you were king of the world, and traveling around the world and seeing all these places and playing against some awesome players as well. There is nothing better than the seven. I couldn't recommend the seven circuit any higher to any like developing player coming up. If you can go and do a year or 2 or 3 years doing that, travel the world, playing some sevens, it's just a great experience.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so much fun. And then coming towards 2017, 2018, I was coming off contract with the All Black Sevens, and I actually broke my leg in the Singapore Sevens circuit against South Africa. Last game was a minute to go, and it was done. The tournament was going to be done, and obviously go out, enjoy the boys and their company, check out Singapore. But obviously couldn't do that. So I was on a road to recovery, and 2017, 2018 probably were my worst years. I had big setbacks. I obviously broke my leg. I was having heaps of ankle injuries, and also played my first Mitre 10 Cup game. Oh, not my first, but back in 2018, played my first game that season, and then did my shoulder. So tore everything off my rotator cuff. Nothing was hanging on, so I had to go for surgery. And I got the word from the coach. They said, if you're gonna take surgery, we're not looking at recontracting you, which was pretty guttering at the time because I was loving my sevens, sevens back then. But I had to get my shoulder fixed, so I had to leave the sevens environment and try and stick out 15s with Mitre 10. But then I ended up making my way to Melbourne and went in full time with the Melbourne Rebels.
Yeah.
For about, I was only supposed to be there for 2 to 4 weeks. I was just helping out, filling in with numbers. The day I was leaving, I went up to the coaches and boys and said, "See you later, thanks for having me, blah, blah." And then the coach pulled me into his office and was like, "Oh, we're actually wanting to keep you here for the rest of preseason and play out our preseason games against Seawolves, the Japan team back then, Brumbies and Reds. So stuck it out there for another 2-3 months with them, and then they sent me up to Sydney to play in their Shoot Shield competition. Not too sure if you boys know about that. It's a club competition, but it's actually it's a semi-professional rugby comp where some boys are getting a bit of money on the side, but also having to go to work. And then playing that season out, got a call asking if I was interested in coming to the United States and playing in the MLR. At the time, I was like, I wasn't too sure about that. Never ever thought I'd see myself living over here, but once I went home and spoke to the parents and my siblings, they were like, it's something you got to have to tick off your bucket list. Like, when would you ever go to the United States to live and enjoy what you love to do? So, yeah, back on the phone and said, yeah, I'm ready to come over. And yeah.
So tell us about the Freejacks as well, because you sort of came onto the scene quite under the radar in terms of, like, you know, you didn't do like an LA or a San Diego and, you know, get a Mar Nonu or get a Rob Shaw or get a Gitto or anyone like that, or even us with like myself or Bastro. But you signed well, and you gave us a hiding in your first game, like a proper hiding, and introduced yourself to the league. And then I noticed that, you know, your fan basis was good when you played your home games. Like, from the get-go, you had a good following. And you know, I don't think you haven't lost a game at home, have you? I think like you're probably the only team in the whole league that has an undefeated record at home.
Yeah, we're 5-0 at the moment, which is pretty cool, pretty special, I think.
But just tell me about, like, what's it like in terms of, you know, when you arrived, what's the Boston area like? Do you love it? Like, were they very, like, did your family come over? You know, how's it all behind the scenes? Obviously, like, we just see you on the field playing rugby, and, you know, you're a good team. Everyone knows that. You know, you've won some big games. But I just want to know about the life behind the scenes of a Free Jack.
Yeah, so last year when I arrived, I was supposed to arrive in Boston on the 27th, but I had to ring them up and be like, hey, I can't turn up on that day. It's my sister's wedding. Can we push it out a little bit more? So I ended up flying into Boston New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve. So got into Boston, did the big travel. And then I got a text saying, hey, mate, the boys are in camp at the moment. We're going to have to chuck you on a bus to bring you to where we are in New Hampshire, which is like a 2-hour drive.
Right.
So after the long flight, I had to get on a bus, sit on the bus. I was very lucky that the bus had Wi-Fi on it. I couldn't believe it. I've never seen a bus in New Zealand that had Wi-Fi on it. so I was obviously wide awake because I'm obviously in a new country, and finally reached the destination where everyone was, and got off the bus, and I've never felt cold ever before that day. I was so freezing. I was in shorts, had a t-shirt, had just a hoodie on, just coming back from New Zealand summer straight into the thick of Boston winter. It was pretty crazy. I was like, I can't be at the right place. This is not right. It's just too cold for me. But ended up getting picked up from the management. They said, oh, would you like to go to the hotel now? Or you want to go meet the boys? And I was like, oh, where's the boys? It's pretty late at night. Like, why isn't everyone back at the hotel? They're like, oh, they got a surprise for you. So ended up going with them. We're walking down the street. We happened to walk into a bar. I was like, what the hell are we doing in a bar? This is at 10 o'clock at night. I'm just like, walks in, and then I just see a bunch of big rugby boys. Never met any of them before. Saw the bunch of big rugby boys sitting all at the back, and I was like, what's going on here? So apparently they had been in camp for 2 days and just been grinding it out. And so the CEOs obviously said, oh, well, let the boys have a good time, and put on a tab for the boys, and that's how I got to meet everyone. I had to chug out Guinness.
Our superstars arrived. I'll put the tab on. We've flown him all the way from New Zealand. He looks freezing cold. Get him a beer jacket. Get him on the sauce. What better way to introduce you to rugby, bro?
And at the time, I was like, I do not want to know alcohol. I had a big night at my sister's wedding. I think I wrote myself off that night. Got to meet the coaches, trainers, all the boys. And yeah, they just handed me a big, what do you call, a jug of Guinness, and they're just yelling at me, screaming at me to chug it down. So I'm just like trying to chug it down, but at the same time trying to take in everything. I've just landed in America, But no, it was good fun. It was actually good fun. We had some good boys that year. A lot of them didn't come back this year. But yeah, moving on forward, like we did a lot of stuff at Dartmouth College or University. I'm not too sure if it's a uni, but and we just did a lot of our off-season, pre-season stuff there, and it was just mostly in the books, learning game plans and whatnot. And then yeah, like you said, we come across you boys up in Las Vegas, which was pretty unreal. Like to play your very first game for the Freejacks in Las Vegas. But obviously, I've been there for the sevens and stuff. Yeah. But come up against you boys, and to be honest, I didn't think we were gonna win. We were just like, oh my god, all these boys just got chucked together, and we were looking at you boys, and you obviously had yourself and Buster, and everyone was just buzzing out that we were playing against Buster at the time. So just, and then yeah, like you said, we got that lucky penalty, that kick that we done off a short arm penalty.
It was all planned, surely. It was all planned. I think it was all planned.
I think we were that wrecked. We just said, just chuck it up and let's just see where the ball bounces, and we'll just send somebody down the field. And it happened to work out for us. Hit the crossbar and put you circling around.
Mikey loves to remind me of that, don't you, Mikey? He loves to remind me.
But coming back this year into Boston, we've got a good fan base. I think during COVID-19 last year, they got academies running up over here. And I didn't actually know there was that much rugby supporters in Boston. I thought it was all of a Patriots, Celtics kind of a feel. But we actually got a good support base and good fans that come out and support us. I think last year we sold a lot of season memberships. And once COVID hit, we said, oh, we can give you the money back. But everyone said, no, we don't want it back. We want it for next season. So I was just like, oh my God, that's pretty sick. Like if they're saying they want to keep being a part of us and supporting us, then so I think we had a lot to give back to them. And I guess that shows like we're 5-0 at home. So
talking about
Boston community, man, is a really, really good rugby community. But I remember, so Beaudein, tell us a little bit about, because I for one, I'm curious. I remember when New York started as a franchise or whatever it would be called in this league, and it was like the logistics of playing rugby in New York were a nightmare, right? Like trying to find the field, trying to find a place to work out. I mean, Ben, you remember we were like all over the shop, right? And then people were living in different parts throughout the city. But then we came up against the Freejacks in like what was basically their pilot season or your pilot season. I know you weren't there yet, but it was like their preseason warm-up before they were going to join MLR. And New England is a huge geographical area, right? Like, so you talk about you're taking all of New England, right? So like all these different states thrown together. And so they were practicing at like 5:30 in the morning or something insane. I remember talking to the guys that because they were all working and they had 5:30 in the morning training. And like you said, it was like they were under like 2 feet of snow half the time. So what's it like now? Like, how has this program grown from 5:30 a.m. trainings? Are you still doing 5:30 a.m. trainings as a team? Or where are you at now? Like, what's been the progression of coming from that model to how you've built a program that is sort of centralized in a very particular area of New England?
Yeah, I think we brought in the right people that sort of knows that professional system and how to run things. And obviously we got Alex Magleby, he's our CEO, who's been in the USA setup. I think he coached the sevens and maybe even played the sevens or even the 15s aside. So he obviously knows how to get a team going. And I know we brought in the likes of Tom Kindley, who's our manager, who was just under the pump last year, and then he recruited a good coaching staff, Ryan Martin and James Willix, who have been around the game for such a long time. And obviously they must have had a big in the off season. They must have been connecting real well to get this all sorted, because I think compared to last year, our setup wasn't as great. That's why I think a few of the boys may have not come back. They didn't really enjoy the setup here, but bringing in the likes of Ryan Martin, who has that experience in how to get a team together, and he also looks out for the boys, so he tries to get what the boys want and what they need. It's hard to explain because I haven't been in those conversations in the back room with these people, so it's kind of hard to give you a bit of feedback on how it's evolved from then to now.
Yeah.
But they're not training at 5:30 in the morning. But those are
no.
That's all my
I would have scratched out if I had to turn. No, I said, nah, we're changing the times.
He wouldn't be back either if they're doing 5:30 in the morning. It sounds like you've got a good culture though. You've brought in a few players like Dougie Five's come in. He's another sevens boy. He's really excelled. Jackson Thebes, is it? He's your captain because he came.
No, he's Josh Larson's the captain.
Oh right, okay. Was he last year? Well, it really annoyed me because he's a really good player, and our coaches Keys and Tolks, he came in to train with New York, and New York said, "Oh, we're all right, we're set," and didn't want him, and then he signed for you boys and then carved up against us. So I always really rated him as a player, and you've got some great players in your squad. So I know you've had a few injuries though, like you said. Obviously, you're moving into 10 and things like that, but you have a good squad of good players. So it's good to see that you're growing as an organization, but also for me, having someone like you at the age you are and your caliber of player, like hopefully, I don't know this, I'm going to ask this question now, is do you see your future staying over in America and continue to play in the MLS, continue to be part of the Freejacks and growing that team?
That's something I'm still asking myself. I've still got one more year on my contract with the Freejacks, but I actually can't even answer that myself, to be honest. Obviously, I want to experience all types of rugby all around the world to try and get over to Europe and even try and play over there. But yeah, to be honest, I actually don't know. I would love to stick it around here though. The team culture and the coaching staff there, they're fabulous. They do such good things for us. But yeah, I couldn't tell you.
And do you have aspirations to go back and play more Mitre 10 rugby and play rugby back in New Zealand? I mean,
so
Europe, so
yeah, so I'm talking with the club team I played for last year, Waikato, but they're a bit airy about us coming back because we don't get back until second round of their season. Mm-hmm. And once we do get back, we then have to go into quarantine.
Yeah, I heard that.
So it's kind of tricky, but at the same time, I'm trying to get back. There's a couple of boys in our team that have signed back to New Zealand, but some of their club teams have said that's fine. They can miss out on few Mitre 10 Cup games. But yeah, the plan is to try and get back. Otherwise, I might be looking to stick around in Boston for an extra couple of more months and help out with one of the club rugby teams there.
Cool.
So I've heard, we've spoken to a couple of guys that have played Mitre 10, and as someone that has never played Mitre 10 myself, the MLR has been often equated to the Mitre 10. Right, because it's not quite Super Rugby, right, in terms of where it's at in the hierarchy of style of play. It's very different from the Premiership, right? If you watch Premiership highlights, it's not quite the same game as is the MLR. But how do you see the Mitre 10 as a sort of parallel league? Is the MLR a better league? Is it very similar? What's similar versus different maybe about playing that one league down in New Zealand rugby from Super Rugby to what we have here in the US with the with Major League Rugby?
I personally think the Mitre 10 Cup competition is a lot better than the MLR. I'm not saying the MLR's shit rugby. It's grown since last year to now, and I'm sure it has grown since the first time it started to now. But the competition of rugby back home, obviously being its number one sport, is a lot harder. And you obviously got to try and push for spots that some players don't get an opportunity to, so they try and look elsewhere. And now that the MLR's come about, you're going to see a lot of them trying to jump over, only because it works in well with the Mitre 10 Cup as well. Like the MLR competition is the start of the year here, and then it fits in perfect like a month or two later is the Mitre 10 Cup. So yeah, I definitely think the Mitre 10 Cup competition is a lot more harder than the MLR, but at the same, in saying that, MLR comp has grown from last year to now, and the quality of rugby here has definitely taken a big leap.
Yeah,
what's going to help us keep going in that direction? Like, how do we get to that? Mitre 10. Is it because just generally from a cultural perspective, there's no pathway? Like you talked a lot about the New Zealand pathway being very structured and very delineated, right? Is that something we need to do better here that'll get us to that level as a competition?
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's got to be a pathway or a system put in place, just like it has been throughout New Zealand since they've been playing rugby. If the Major League Rugby can get a pathway or system put in place, you're going to see the quality of the rugby just go from here right up to there. So, yeah, that's what MLR is definitely missing, is something like that.
Yeah, I think if you look at, it's very hard, Mikey, to compare, American rugby to New Zealand, because New Zealand,
right,
as 3 or 4 year olds, they are groomed to be, All Blacks. That's all everyone wants to be. And when you go over to New Zealand, like I went for the World Cup in 2011, it was amazing to see. Like they were everywhere. Like their team were on the flights out there. They were doing the put your seatbelts on and get in the brace position. They were on, Dan Carter was in his underwear on a big billboard. Every other advert was it's rugby mad. And like, New Zealand is the Mecca. It's the Mecca of New Zealand in terms of, I reckon even like people like Stephen Adams, who's like probably one of the highest paid sportsmen in New Zealand, playing basketball over here, he would have tried to be a rugby player before he went to basketball. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how big rugby is over there.
No, I agree. And I wasn't trying to equate American rugby and by any means, and I hope it doesn't come off as that feeling rugby. Like that wasn't what I was trying to do. Yeah. But you mentioned the 2011 World Cup, and I know you played for Taranaki a little bit, right? I mean, that was where we were based with the U.S. in the 2011 World Cup. What an amazing spot, though. Unbelievable place, Taranaki.
Oh, so you would have got to check out the Yarra Stadium.
Oh, so good.
Oh, it's one of the best stadiums I've played in. I love that place.
Oh, I love it down there. What a good area, too. It looks like not even from a culture standpoint, but just from an experience standpoint. It's like you got the mountains in the backdrop. It's a coastal community as well, right? So you could do like the whole snowboard thing, the surf thing, which is, man, that's right up my alley, right? Like that's like a dream to sit in Taranaki, snowboard, surf, just hang out, do your thing.
Obviously, you've never been to Dunedin, Mikey, because
I haven't been to Dunedin. No,
mate, you don't want to go Dunedin either.
No, I never made it.
Not at all.
The whole thing was we had Danny Tusitala on the show, and he's got some Mitre 10 experience as well, and a couple of the American guys that I know have played in the Mitre 10. And so they have said that the standard was somewhat similar, but it's good to hear that from a person that has played in the Mitre 10 consistently, that, we aren't quite there yet, right? Because we want to aspire to be a league that people from the Mitre 10 want to come play in to elevate the game here, right? We want to get the MLR to be one of the leagues in the world that the best players from around the world want to come play in. And so it's good that your honesty is good. Like I think that's awesome. And that's the only way for us to, when we get honest with each other about it.
I've got something. If I can remember correctly, I think New Zealand brought over a Mitre 10 Cup team to play a couple of the MLR teams. And
that was the Sabercats.
Yeah, they played the Sabercats. And if you think, at the time when those boys came over, not lying, most of those boys were all academy players. So they're just leaving school, coming out of school. So that just goes to show how like rugby is really, really big in New Zealand. Because I think they might have done a job on Houston. I don't want to talk Houston down because they are a quality team. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good. You've experienced it only for 2 years. You did the COVID season and this season, but you're right. Everything's getting better every year. Because I've done the 3 years at Rooney, Rugby United New York. Sorry, we're not called Rooney anymore. Sorry, Rick. And every year it's got better. Every year, every team has got better. It's not just like one team that's jumped to the top. Every year, the likes of Utah, the likes of Austin, and you can just see these teams are getting better. Even Houston as well, although they've had they had a good start and a shaky middle. And they're not doing too good now. But everyone's growing. Everyone's getting better. There's no such thing as an easy game. We got hammered by Toronto earlier on in the season. Then we beat LA. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no such thing as an easy game now in this.
No, not at all.
Always really healthy for the game. But I want to ask you what. Obviously, we're coming to an end. We've had you for quite a while. I wanted to ask you about your sevens time, because you played under Gordon Titchens, who probably goes down as one of the greatest coaches of sevens in the history of the game, and he's had some superstars come through those ranks. And the sevens was really like another platform that New Zealand used to use to blood a lot of players coming through to the All Blacks.
Yeah.
What made him such a good coach? I heard that he was I was always quite scared of him when I used to play against him. He just looked like a scary old head teacher kind of dude that I didn't want to, piss off or cross. So I kept well away from him. But what made him such a good coach when you were underneath him?
I was scared of him at the time as well. Don't get me wrong. He is a scary guy, but he's one of those. He's hard to talk to. It's hard to. He's not approachable. It's hard to go up and start a conversation, and that's weird coming from a player in his team.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to just get out of your comfort zone and just man up really, and just go and knock on the door and have those conversations you want with them. But he's a coach that demands excellence. He doesn't like failing. If you do the smallest mistake, it's back on the line and you're back doing fitness. It's one of those things where you have to demand excellence from yourself and also from your teammates, because no one likes getting on the line and doing shuttles 20-46. Oh, Broncos, Broncos are. No one likes doing all that sort of stuff. So that's probably how I would put it, to somebody who really demands excellence and doesn't like failing.
And it's interesting you say that you were kind of like scared of him, because I found that, I had a really good relationship with Jim Malander, who is my coach for Sale Sharks when I first got there. Then he coached me at England under-21s, and then I was with him at Northampton for nearly 9 years. And although I had a really good relationship and I loved Jim, I was always scared of him. I was always scared that he'd be mad at me or tell me off. And I think those coaches are the ones who they just juggle that relationship really well, where, you can have honest conversations and say what you want, but there's always that element of fear.
Yeah.
And I always think that Titch has always had that as well. And everyone I spoke to who knows Titch has said the same thing. Yeah, he just looks scary and you just don't want to piss him off. And he's the kind of guy that you want to, do perfect for. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to, that disappointing look that he'll give you if you fuck up and get on the line.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I remember the first day he called me, I was actually going to Australia for a holiday. And he called me and he was like, "Oh, we're interested in you coming into a camp. Would you be able to make it?" And I was like, "Of course I'm going to be able to make it." In my mind, I was like, "Of course I'm going to be able to make it. I'll be there. Don't worry about that." And I finally got to meet him, and I was just looking at him. I was like, he didn't even put a smile on or anything. And I was just like, do you smile? Or
yeah. But even when you guys used to win, you'd win the competition and be showing the trophy, and look at him, he'd be staring at you like no expression. It's like
no expressions whatsoever. It's crazy. But once you actually really do get to know him, I think I actually really got to know him after a season and a half.
Yeah.
Once you actually really get to know him, he actually can joke around with you. But at the same time, there's times when you've done something wrong, or your big test wasn't as good enough, because there was a minimum requirement that if you didn't get over 13, you're automatically not going to make the team for that week. So
wow, okay.
So he's already, it's pretty crazy. So you every time you're just working your ass off because you just want to get over 13 just to have a slight chance of making the team for that week to travel or wherever you're playing.
Well, I would never play for I would never play for the Sevens, mate. Mikey, you'd have been fine. You're fit as a flea. I would never have made the team. You'd be like, go home, pack your bags, Foden, and off you pop.
Like the likes of Tim Mickelson, he's been in there for almost 10 years now. He's hitting, to this day, he's still hitting like 15 on the beep test, level 15, 13 or something.
You know, whispering to him, if you only need 13 to make the team, you only need 13.
Yeah. Oh, he just goes all day. And then even the likes of DJ Forbes, he's still getting in the 14s and 15s. I was just like, oh, you boys are crazy.
Yeah.
I'll just get past that bare minimum and then hopefully do well on the field.
Thinking man, you're a thinking man, that's why.
Yeah.
All right, Beaudein, we're going to let you go. Honestly, awesome to chat to you. Good luck this weekend, and I mean that. We need you to win against Nola, defend that home record. Go well. I hope you, I know that you enjoyed your week off, because we did plan on trying to have you last week, but you were off. You were off doing some team bonding and some culture stuff, culture building out in Boston. Yeah, but best of luck, mate. You're a quality player. I love watching you, love what you do. So good luck with the season, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks, because we do play each other one more time.
All right. Cheers, Ben. Thanks for that. Thanks for having me.
G'day, I'm Drew Mitchell, and you're watching the USA Rugby Clubhouse.
Right, for our second guest, it's someone that a few people have been waiting for. He is the third leg of the famous tripod. He hails from Australia before plying his trade over in France and cashing in with Toulon. It's a man with 71 caps for Australia. It's none other than Drew Mitchell. Drew, thanks for coming on the Clubhouse, mate. Nice to see you.
No worries, mate. Thanks so much. I've been waiting for the call up.
I bet you've been waiting for a while to throw your 50p in and have your say on the boys after they jumped on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, I've got this sort of the opportunity for rebuttal after they jumped on first, and I got to listen to it all and then and digest it before I get my chance now.
I'll start. We always start right back at the start, Drew.
Sure.
Obviously you're Australian, where rugby's a bit more of a mainstream sport than it is here in America. But just tell people how you got into rugby, how you started, your sort of pathway to becoming a professional rugby player.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess in a nutshell, I was a young fella that played pretty much any sport that was available to me. My father was in the army, which meant we just moved quite a lot. Every sort of 12 to 18 months, we were getting shipped up to a new army base up and down the east coast of Australia. So I actually grew up playing rugby league more. And I played one stint for 3 years of AFL just because of where Dad was located down in the south of Australia and Victoria. Pretty much that was all that was offered. And then it wasn't until I went to secondary school at 13 years old that my school offered only rugby union. So I played union on Saturdays and rugby league on either Friday nights or Sundays. So I sort of doubled up for about 5 years or so. And it was around the back end of school. I guess I started having to make a bit of a decision. I was making some rep teams and stuff, and I got an opportunity to either go to rugby league for the Canterbury Bulldogs in their Jersey Flegg, their sort of their underage program, or go to the Queensland Reds in the rugby union for their Reds Academy. And look, to be honest, someone said to me around that time, they said, Drew, rugby league, you can play Newcastle and Townsville, or rugby union, you can play Paris and London. I was like, okay, I'm going rugby union. So that's pretty much how I made my decision. I think because of the global aspect of it, and, obviously now America's a huge part of that now that, it can take you all around the world. And I've seen a lot of the world. There's still obviously plenty that I'd like to see, but I've seen a lot of the world, and a lot of that's because of the game of rugby.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. One of the main things that attracted me to rugby was the travel as well. And I jumped on the 7 circuit. Did you ever do the 7 circuit?
Yeah, I got 4 tournaments out. It was when I just first started the Queensland Reds. I did was when Brisbane was actually one of the destinations. So I did Brisbane, South Africa, Hong Kong, and Dubai. So I got some good ones out. That was it. Yeah. And I got the call up.
I forget about how young your generation of players, sort of like you, James O'Connor, Gits, Swoop, Beale, you were all very young when you were sort of brought into the Australian team, and you were sort of made the poster boys of Australian rugby. Obviously, you mentioned you played a bit of rugby league, and rugby league is probably the primary sport to Australians.
Yeah.
And rugby sort of came second, and they really tried to sort of build a young team, an exciting team. The brand of rugby you boys were playing back then was awesome to watch. And also you were young, you were 21, 22, 23 years old coming on the scene and ripping it up. So it gave Australian rugby fans like something to really back and get behind.
Yeah, look, I think it was also because we came off the back of a pretty decent generation of the Gregans, the Larkhams, the George Smiths and Mortlocks and Jeremy Pauls and all these guys. So, I mean, off the back of the success that the Wallabies had in '99, and then missing out on the World Cup in 2003 because old mate Johnny Wilkinson's got a decent kick on him. But there was pretty much that there was that change in tide, I suppose, where there was I guess some of the names that you just mentioned were coming in, and as a few of the other players were retiring, especially around that 2007 World Cup mark as well. So look, there's obviously some pretty big shoes to fill, and I think it's something that, I think not necessarily trying to fill anyone's shoes now, but we just haven't reached the heights that we reached sort of around that sort of millennium type era. So like you say, we're up against it here in Australia. The rugby league is by far and away ahead of rugby union in terms of popularity and engagement and viewership. So is Australian rules football. And then we've also got soccer, like the world game as well. So, and with only sort of 27 million people here in Australia, and more of them starting to play these types of games and actually getting outside and playing real games. We're up against it in terms of the development and the depth that we've got to call on. So, I mean, it was, I guess to go back to your first statement, sort of, there's a young breed of us coming through, and I guess all of us like to play that exciting brand of footy. We also like to be in and amongst it off the field as well, which sometimes led to good things, sometimes not so much.
Brings culture.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it also brings a bit of relatability as well. I think, and especially now that social media is just so strong and so prominent in all of our lives, is that we get to see people like what they're like away from the sport. Like when I was growing up, and I'm sure it's the same for you, that a lot of what we just saw of the athletes that we looked up to and admired was just in their training gear or the games that they played, and that was it. We never really got any sort of exposure into who they were as people away from the sport. Whereas now you can follow someone, you can feel like you kind of get to know them really well just by engaging with their Instagram stories, Twitter, whatever it is that they're posting on. So I think that sort of probably helped in some way that we were. When we crossed the line, we were professional, we were competitive. We wanted to do everything we could to kind of put ourselves in the best position to win. But then when we crossed the line back off the field, they could see that we could relax and we could, we were knockabouts. We were able to go down to, we'd enjoy going down the pub and having a beer with the boys and just doing sort of normal things. So I think that having that sort of relatability also helped.
Yeah, I'd say that we're similar ages, and we were sort of the last breed that sort of had the life with, no mobile phones and no constant CCTV. And then halfway through our careers, that became a big thing, and Instagram and social media and stuff became a big thing. Which side of it did you prefer? Do you prefer the bit where, you're a professional rugby player and you're in the papers for that bit, and once you're sort of off the field, you can sort of do what you want, get away with what you want, or the constant CCTV sort of kept you on your toes, made you more professional? And
I mean, look, I think there's good and bad for both, right? I think the best thing is you just got to try and remain your most authentic self. I think if you try and portray an image on social media that's not you, and then you get found out, that's when people come down on you hard. Like if you're sort of sitting there saying that you only do this and you're all about stretching and the recovery and all that, and then all of a sudden you find yourself on the front page, because that's what someone said to me. It said, Drew, it's always good to be on the back page, never the front page, because the front page means you're in the shit, right? So, I know that's through. And if someone's like trying to portray like this, really professional, disciplined, blah blah blah, and then they get found out for doing something else, I think that's when people come down harder on you. Whereas if you just sort of portray your most authentic self, I think people then can kind of, they understand. It's not as big of a shock, I think, when someone gets caught for things. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's more the attitude of other people, really, like the attitude of people trying to catch someone out, like trying to antagonize you when you're out in the drink, just having a drink with your mates, and think that it's funny to come up and have a crack at you, and while their friends behind filming your reaction or something. I think that's the sad side. Well, one of the sad sides of social media is that it brings out the dark side of people's personalities, like where they want to try and catch someone out for doing the wrong thing, or even by setting you up for doing it, as opposed to just trying to celebrate, like people's successes or just like them as people. So.
Well, luckily for you, Drew, I haven't read too many bad articles about you.
I was really close, mate. I was really close. And it's one of your old teammates, Denny Cipriani, who was followed everywhere. It was like he had a drone above him before drones were even invented. But that night where he got in trouble in Melbourne for grabbing the bottle over the bar, and it was all over like News of the World and all that. I don't know if you can find the footage, but if you go back to it, he leans into someone to speak to them just before he grabs the bottle. Well, that was me. So Denny's always said that I owe him, because I think he must have said, because we weren't getting served at the bar, and he's like, mate, should I grab this bottle? I must have just said, yeah, mate, grab it. But when they highlighted the circle on the person who was grabbing it, they highlighted him, and I was just sort of a bit in the peripheral. But I avoided that one pretty closely.
You know what that tells me about you and Denny? It tells me that you're the ideas man, and he's the man of action. And he was like, yeah, Daddy, just grab that bottle for me. And he's just do it for me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so he took the rap for that one. So I mean, we've spoken about it, Denny and I, but I owe him one in next time we get to catch up.
The amount of times that Chris Ashton got me in trouble on nights out, one time ending up in prison and being all over the paper, while he went to the horse races with Dylan Hartley and was lifting up the jockey. And I did nothing wrong. I was drunk in the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up sitting in the cells for a night. So we've all been there. We've all done that. For guys. Anyway, I want to talk to you about American rugby as well, because that's what the show's all about. And I know that all the attention is on Swoop and Gits over in LA and doing that thing. But the truth of the matter is, Drew, is you were on this bandwagon way before that. Before that. You I remember having a conversation with you, or must have been
2019, I think.
Yeah, 2019 was it? About over and playing for New York, and you were pretty much here. You were, I think it was the COVID season. You were pretty much going to come out to the training and join in, and you hadn't played for a while. Tell us about that. Tell us how it came about and what made you think, I'm going to dust off the boots and give it one more go.
Look, so I retired in 2017 from when I was playing in Toulon. Came back, did a couple of years of punditry with Fox Sports here in Australia. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Tokyo for the 2019 Rugby World Cup. And off the back of that, I was going to New York to speak at a University of Queensland alumni event over in New York. And so I was already going to be over there. And that was that's who I played Colts in first grade for when I first finished school. And I was already over there. And then don't know how it came about, but I got put in touch with Greg McWilliams, the coach at the time of New York, and James Kennedy, who was also involved at the time as well. And they said, look, how interested are you in perhaps catching up and talking about potentially playing? And I was like, well, look, I'm already going to be in New York at this time. Let's at least sit down for a coffee. So I went and caught up with the guys, and they were just like, and look, my spirit animal is a moth, right? Like I'm attracted to the bright light. So to be in New York, it's like it was a dream for me, right? And like, everyone sort of says, what's your spirit animal? And everyone's like, oh, gorilla or lion or whatever. I'm a moth, man. Like if there's a light on, I'm at it. Like it's, so that's why I think New York really appealed to me. I'd been there a few times, just sort of short stints to visit. And I just thought, again, like if this rugby thing can take me to a city like New York and play New York, then I'll get myself in shape and I'll dust the boots off and, I'll go around again. And I didn't sort of doubt that I could get back into that shape because, we're all just too competitive and I'm too ego strong to kind of go out there and put my name to something and run out and, be part of a team and not be in the best position possible for that. So that was never really the issue. We spoke for a little while and we agreed to terms and I was like, yep, I'm in, all signed up. And then like I started packing my house, like I had boxes and I was packing it up and then this little thing called COVID came around and just like spoiled all my plans. Yeah. They just like, that was the reason and the only reason really. Like I was in your boys' team group chats and, so I was doing all these updates and all these things like Zoom calls and different things like through this COVID lockdown period where, what you guys were doing to stay in touch and on top of your footage and all that sort of stuff and like just connecting with each other whilst you're all locked up over in New York. I was here in Sydney, obviously, but yeah, so it was pretty much, it was done. And then I just thought that, I think probably like everyone, we just didn't really know, right? Like whether this COVID thing was going to be a 1 month proposition or a 2 month. And then, so I just sort of held on, kept packing things slowly, just thinking, because my visa was approved. All I needed was just to go in and get it stamped, and that was it. And that had just been delayed just because of COVID as well. Like I had the date to go into the office, that got pushed back a little bit. But that room isn't in the high. Hold on, and then and then off the series started talking to me for some reason. And then mate, and then it just like as we all know, this COVID thing just kept dragging out, and then then I kind of. It started getting to a point where I was like, shit, it's been about 6 months. I need some income. Had to start sort of looking around for something else. And then luckily for me, the rugby broadcast here in Australia changed from Fox Sports to Channel 9 and Stan Sport because I had a year out of not working with Fox Sports. So then you guys signed me up on a 3-year deal. So I was sort of like, at that point, I was speaking to Rick Salizo, who's the CEO of you boys over there. And I just said, mate, like given the current climate of the world and all the uncertainty, like I kind of need this 3 years of certainty, you know. So, which he understood, which was great. And that was pretty much the only reason why I'm not running around against the Giltinis with you, mate. Like forming some sort of back three partnership for at least 20 minutes of the game. I don't know if I can give you much more than that, but yeah, like otherwise we would have been the duo, not the Swoop and Gits of the LA alumni.
Terrorizing defenses, terrorizing. So obviously very good. I'll show you the nights in New York. Yeah, it's a different monster out here. Obviously, we mentioned you're very good mates with Gitto and Swoop.
Yeah.
Have they not been on the phone to you about, or, you know, I know this, and they mentioned you. They said if they could add one player to their roster, Drew Mitchell would be the man. Both of them said we're going to say you. Have they not been on the phone seeing if they can entice you over? Obviously, you're not contracted or anything.
You know what? Like, I've seen all this stuff on podcasts and all these like little things that they do on your show and other shows, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, Drew would be the first guy," you know, blah blah blah. But they just they honestly haven't called me. Like they text every now and then. I don't know whether it's just because you can't FaceTime in America or something, which I'm sure you can, but they've never even attempted it in their 6 months that they've been over there so far. So whilst they're saying all this stuff outwardly, I just don't know if I feel it. I just don't know if I feel the love as much as they're saying it. But
that tells me that LA's got them now, mate. I hear this. You know, very
I mean, look, I can see that they're obviously, you know, like life's good for them, like living on the beaches there. They got their families over there, which is great to see them all, you know, just loving it so much. But they've got they've got the new toy. I think they've just forgotten about the old one with like maybe one eye coming out and needs a little stitch here and there. Like, you know, like that old one that's a little bit neglected for a while. Perhaps they need to give that old toy a little bit more love. But no, in all seriousness, there's been times though, mate. There have been some times where I've been out with Adam Gilchrist, the owner of the Giltinis and the Gilgronis, out for some long lunches because he's pretty good at those. And literally, I've called probably my agent 5 times, saying, "All right, mate, let's do it. Let's get that release, get that transfer. Let's get me over there." And then I'd wake up with a bit of a sore head, and I go, "No, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that." Like I was, you know, I was slightly inebriated. But yeah, I think it's great to see them enjoying it so much. I think the LA team are doing things really well in terms of trying to get engagement with the American public as well as everyone, you know, like all of us over here as well. Just their socials are great. Playing in stadiums like SoFi and the Coliseum is fantastic as well. And obviously just, you know, knowing players and coaches and the staff like Adam Fryer, Stephen Hoyle, as well as, you know, Darren Coleman, all the coaches. I think it's just good to see that they're having a real good crack at trying to help rugby in what is a pretty competitive market over there.
Yeah. And are you following the MLR? Do you watch on the Rugby Network? Do you watch the different things going on and a few?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I've been really impressed. I try and watch as much as I can. I feel like all I do these days is watch rugby because you know, obviously got to keep across it down here in the Super Rugby and then all the Test rugby coming up and then the MLR stuff as well. But you know what? I can't complain too much because whilst I said I've got a job for 3 years, it's 2 days a week, so it's not too bad. So I do have a little bit of time on my hands to watch some footy. But mate, I've been really impressed actually. You know, and also because I think it's really obvious that the growth and the development in players, but also the teams in terms of like the how competitive teams are, how like, you know, set pieces are strong, the collisions are huge, and just it's obviously the understanding. And I think every team's got a good little balance of international influence as well as, you know, homegrown talent in America. And I think everyone's benefiting from that. I think, you know, I'm sure you guys, the international boys, are getting, you know, some benefits and positives from the American boys, much like they would be getting it from you guys as well. So, yeah, mate, I've been in touch and I've been watching. I've just got to make sure that I don't pick my phone up when I've had a few beers and try to get myself involved.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I thought that you were going to come over and do, you know, obviously you've played a lot of rugby over in Australia. You went to France as well. You're well versed in professional rugby. I always thought that you were going to sort of come over, maybe play a year or two, and then also then dive into the media, because as you said, you signed with Fox Sports, sort of stuff. That's the area that I thought that you were going to really come in and try and get involved in. It's obviously something that I'm trying to do now with this show. Could you see yourself in a few years, maybe, if rugby really does take off over here, getting over here? And also another question as well, on top of that, do you think the development of rugby in America, if it becomes a big sport, even 15-20% of the size of the NFL, will that help with Australian rugby, do you feel?
Yeah, look, I think, first and foremost, I was going to do sort of like a bit of a dual package. That was what my visa was, like in terms of sort of like playing / sort of maybe even going to some like after 1 year, maybe do some sort of coaching, consulting with the boys, but then also going to the punditry, the media stuff up there. And look, that's, again, like if rugby can take me somewhere, like New York or something like that, then it's certainly something I definitely consider. And it looks like, with the way that the MLR is going at the moment in terms of, the structure of it, the growth of it, the interest and all that sort of stuff, I feel like there's definitely going to be opportunities for that moving forward, whether it be for me or for someone else. I think it's definitely going to get to that space. And Matt, I do think that the growth of rugby in America will eventually help Australia as well. I think, there's a number of players, be it at the top end, like your Gittos and your Ashley Coopers, to also some of the guys that are getting, maybe picked from club rugby out of here in Australia. So you're kind of getting the full landscape from, like guys just getting their first taste and perhaps using it as a bit of a pathway compared to the guys at the other end that they're, just going over there more for the experience, but obviously really competitive still, wanting to go out there and do the best they can, but it's more of a bit of a life experience for them. And I think eventually it just becomes another option for players with, you're finishing school or, even for us as a game, trying to entice players into rugby union away from league, AFL and soccer, when you can use American rugby as a bit of a carrot, as a bit of a lure to say, look, you play rugby and you could find yourself playing in LA and New York or in San Diego, like wherever, in the future. So those types of things are really enticing. It becomes a bit of a destination carrot as well. And I just think it's good for the growth of the game. I think, obviously there's an argument around domestically how strong we are in terms of trying to keep all our best talent in Australia. I've said it a number of times, I think we need to start looking outside of the people who are just playing in Australia to play for Australia. I think with where we're at competitively in this market and also in, where we're at in World Rugby standings, we need to start picking our best players available. And that doesn't mean picking all 30 players from outside of Australia. It might mean we pick a Will Skelton, we pick 4 or 5 players outside. That just strengthens our squad, right? So I think with that in mind, I think, if there's another 16 teams, 18 teams, 20 teams, wherever it lands in the MLR, there are another 20 opportunities for players to go and play for a professional team and get exposed to professional coaches, facilities, experiences. Then, it's only going to be better for us in the long run.
And I don't know if you've heard, but America have just recently had their bid approved for the 2027 and the 2031 World Cup.
Yeah.
And if that does go through, personally, I think the 2031 would be perfect. I think
same.
14 years of professional rugby here in America. It means that, you'll have kids who are, 9, 10 years old now playing for the Eagles, hopefully in a World Cup in their own backyard, who are playing rugby at that early age, which is so important for development of players. And then also add in the athletes that you can get from the fall-offs from American football, basketball, and those sports. What do you think the chances are of America's sort of like, building towards that and having a team that can compete with the likes of Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, England, Ireland in the World Cup? Is it realistic? Have they got the chance and the time frame to get it ready and set for a massive push in the World Cup in 2020?
Look, I think there's 2 sides to look at it, right? I think one side of it is America are more than capable of hosting a world-class event, right? Like they're just, entertainment events. That's just what they do. It's what you guys are great at. It's, so from that side of it, box ticked, 100%. But then from the rugby side of things as well, right? Like you look at it, when Japan hosted in 2019. They were also thinking maybe 2015. But World Rugby just thought, you know what, it's probably one cycle too soon, because what they need for a host nation is to not be bowed out before quarterfinals. Like, you know, and Japan did it beautifully, right? Like they, you know, through the quarterfinals, like they were the team that they were everyone's second team, and for everyone to stay engaged, and you know, especially locally, for everyone to stay engaged in the World Cup, you need your home team, the host team, to be competitive and to be pushing quarterfinals, perhaps beyond. And so for that reason, and much like you're saying as well in terms of the time frame, I think 2031 definitely fits well. Now, obviously, there's perhaps people might think there's a bit of bias there because Australia, we're going for 2027 as well. And I think that, you know, it would be huge for the game here in Australia. And I think that Australia have also proved themselves to be capable of hosting world-class events as well.
Yeah.
So I think 2027 would be perfect for us, and 2031 for that reason, for that extra 4-year cycle, for that development, for all the influence that the MLR is having on the Eagles in the current time, but also in the future, and the development pathways and the academies that you guys are all setting up over there. For them, for that cycle and that time frame, I think 2031 is you know, like really well suited.
How good would it be to be in a squad, in a talented squad, and say you're going to America to play in a World Cup, and they've already announced that they'd already be playing in, you know, Las Vegas, the Raiders' new stadium. It looks like something out of Star Wars. SoFi Stadium, the, you know, most whatever high technological. It is like all of them are signed up. So all the way across America, you'd have, you know, games going on. And for me, I just think it would be, you know, if America were good and they were, you know, pushing for a semi-final, final, I just think the mass excitement and the crowds turning up to these games, and you know how America do sports, it's bigger and louder and better than everyone else. And for them to actually be able to say we are world champions of a sport, a lot of other countries that play, apart from, you know, they say about baseball, basketball, and American football, no other country really plays it to their extent. So it's always an empty sort of hollow victory. But for them to compete at that level, I just think it would be massive.
Mate, for those reasons, like facilities, like, you know, we all watch the NFL and Super Bowls and all these things. So for teams to be able to travel there and be involved in a world-class event where, you know, but the important part is that, like you say, that the people are in, like the entertainment, that's a given, right? You've got all this, like the artists and the pop stars and all that will, like, you know, like will entertain everyone in and around the rugby. But the rugby, I think it's so important that, because it's not just what happens at the event, it's what happens thereafter, like what sort of influence hosting the World Rugby Cup in America, what you do thereafter in terms of engagement, in terms of development, and people coming in and playing the sport, both boys and girls, right across the nation, all that sort of stuff. So I feel like to get the best out of that, then your home team, your host nation needs to be strong as well. And that's not, I don't mean to disrespect America at the moment, because, you know, I've played against them. They're a tough side. But if you get another couple of years, couple of cycles of World Cups of development and growth in them, and with this MLR and everything like that, then, you know, it's almost like we're trying to poke the bear that we just don't want to poke, you know, because we obviously see it's a great potential and a great sort of growth market for the World Rugby. But it's almost like once we poke it, then we're all like, oh shit, we wish we hadn't poked that bear, because, you know, like there's just so much potential there. So I think that's, whilst they're capable of hosting a great World Cup in 2027, I think 2031 is more suitable for the long term.
Well, Drew, we are almost out of time, and I'm very surprised how sensible our conversation has been. We have been very professional and very down the line. So let's take it to LA just to finish up.
Actually, I just quickly, I'll pull you up on something, because I tuned in when the boys were on your show, and that you said you wanted to ask me about a particular try or a defensive lapse of mine.
Well, obviously a mate of mine scored a try that's gone down in the history books.
Yeah.
And, you know, I played with Ashley for years, and I played against you a few times.
Yeah.
And in my head, Drew, you were always way quicker than Ashley.
Yeah, but look, I mean, to be fair, I want to take it back to the start. There's a poor turnover from Will Genia. Like, I don't know how he's not even mentioned in this conversation. He just turned it over on the try line, and I've come from the right side. And And anyway, I came across on the right side to cover. Ash had, it was down the touch line. It was almost just like a bit of a swivel back onto the inside. But
well, that's the thing. He has never stepped a man in his life. Ash's got
right, but he didn't need to so much because I was coming across so hard. And, as you know, that night, the ground, actually, no, you wouldn't know that night. You weren't playing, but the ground was really...
I was playing.
Yeah, I'm kidding. It was a bit soft underfoot. It took me a little bit to turn. And then after that, I was chased. Like, I probably should have just stopped there, right? Like, I tried to do that, like, desperate chase, the dive. I was never a chance. It probably it added to the theatre. It just added to the theatre of the try.
You've always been an entertainer.
Yeah, look, I remember after that, I had a number of pints of Guinness up in the post-match with Chris Ashton, actually. So I did my best to erase it, but people like you just keep bringing it up.
Well, weirdly, all our team were loving that game and over the moon with the final result because it was a good win. But actually, Curtly Beale was my opposite number, and he had a storm. He scored like 2 tries, chipped it over my head at one point.
Oh, right.
I had a bad day at the office, really, if you look at individual performances.
Yeah,
so
but
I only do it to reflect from my
people remember my bad day at the office a little bit more than yours in that game, I think.
Well, it was always good fun with you on the field, though. We always had good.
Good time.
It was a great generation to play because you had some bloody good players. I remember playing Craig Cooper in one, and Lewis Moody was our captain, and the coach was bringing in, just saying, listen, every line out, we just don't want you. You're the tail gunner, and all you're going to do is just run and go and hit Craig. The ball or not, he's going to tackle him the whole day. And Lewis Moody was a nut job and flying at knees all day long. And so it was always interesting to hear the coaches and how we were going to deal with all you guys and how you were all, that's one thing about you boys, is you could light it up. All of you had the ability to sort of turn a match on its head. So hats off to you guys for being quality players. And hopefully,
it's always fun, always good fun. Hopefully we get to catch up for a couple of post games at some point as well.
And okay, just before I go then, Drew.
Yep.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being definitely happening, 1 being not, are we likely to see Drew Mitchell dust his boots off and play a game of rugby over here in the MLR?
Mate, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 going to happen. I'd say I'm probably around, I'm above 5. I'm more leaning 7.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm actually, after I hang up with you, I'm going to go for a run. You've inspired me. But mate, look again. What you're all doing over there, it's it's great to watch and to sort of from afar and for people like me, it makes me it doesn't make me envious. I'm fucking jealous, straight up, like that. What you guys are doing, how much fun you're having, how competitive it is, and the places you get to go to. I sort of sit here and just I don't regret retiring by any means, but it's certainly making me call my agent and say, let's push this visa through, let's make it happen.
Well, I think the game would be much better for you if you came over here, Drew. You've always been a great character on the field, off the field. You know your stuff, ins and outs. We've spoken about some pretty important things that might be happening over here in the MLR, which shows that you're following, you're clued up over here. So I hope to see you over here, whether it's in playing capacity, punditry capacity, whatever capacity. I'd love to see you over here and throwing your hat in the ring as well, mate.
No worries, mate. Thanks very much. Good to chat, and hopefully catch up for a drink soon.
Indeed. Cheers. Thanks for coming on the Rugby Clubhouse.
Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair.
All right, folks. So another awesome guest, another week of games to look forward to as we get ready for the playoffs. So we've got what, 4 weeks? Is it 5 weeks left in the regular season?
4 weeks left. I think it's 4 weeks left of regular season, 4 games left. Is that right? I don't know. I should know. I don't know. It's this week, another week. Yeah, 4. I'm thinking 4. 4 games, then the playoffs, and then the finals. So 6 for New York. Confident.
Oof, yeah.
Confident, mate. Confident.
Tell you what, I hope that none of these games are being played down south at anytime soon. I just can't get out of my mind when we went down to Houston a few years ago and played in the summertime and played the June test in Houston. It was really uncomfortable.
Dude, you should see me at the moment with my bra. Can you see my bra marks? Look at that.
I see the bra marks, yeah.
My bra tan. I just need to whack on a pair of budgie smugglers and have that tan just to match, and then I'm away, mate. I look like I've been in the beach in a bikini.
I thought that was team issued kit, isn't it? Just team issued, and that was like, your Tuesday training and Monday training is always
it's rugby issue kit for every team across the planet. When the sun's out, the budgies come on, and that's the only way it's allowed.
Except when you lose, folks. Then you have to.
So when you lose, and then the sap bra comes on, and off you go. You gotta go run around and do some yards.
I've got an idea for budgie smugglers. If they really want MLR teams to be wearing them at practice, they've got to make a GPS unit that sits in the butt pocket somewhere. You know what I mean?
There you go, mate. Just between the butt cheek. Yeah, 100% down for that.
I think that would be really uncomfortable on a number of levels, but I could also see a couple. You know what?
Pository. Just pop it in.
I could see that being less than ideal. I mean, even just falling on it with it in your back is uncomfortable. I can't imagine if it was like a pocket in your butt cheek, like underwear briefs. Basically,
depends how big your butt is as well. Some boys have got some old big cushions for the pushing, so don't worry about it. It's a good idea. I think I should pitch it. I think we'll pitch it to them. Anyway, let's move on to the fixtures of this week. You've been calling them pretty well of late, to be honest, Mikey. You've done pretty well over the weeks.
You were similar last week, except you took San Diego. That was
I did, yeah.
San Diego.
San Diego, yeah. Okay, we mentioned this. It is starting to heat up now. I'd say the West Coast. There is a big game for the West Coast, not for LA because they're sitting at the top, but Utah are playing Houston, and as always, you and I feel Utah will smoke Houston. 5 points, easy for them. I don't think it needs to be dived into anymore. I think Utah are good tacticians. They've got good players. They've rested guys. They're going to hit the ground running. Houston are in a world of pain as usual. So they get 5 points. The game that really does interest me, though, is the Austin Gilgronis are taking on San Diego at San Diego. Although I think San Diego are done and dusted. I think Utah beating us, them not beating LA is going to play it was their sort of lifeline taken away. They could still mess it up for Austin. And if they beat Austin, Utah get 5 points. That is the gap that they need Utah to sort of say, yeah, we're in second place. LA, Utah are winning and second in the West Coast Conference. So I think that's probably the biggest game sort of to watch in terms of the effects it could have on the outcome of that league. So big one for me to watch, Austin versus San Diego at San Diego. And who do you see winning?
Even though I don't think they're going to do it to do a solid for Utah. I don't think they're sitting there in their locker rooms this week like, guys, we got to win this one for Utah, right? Like, I don't think like, help our boys out. Let's do this. I don't think that's happening, but I do think that San Diego just needs to win a game. And I think that this is a week where they can. I think that they're two evenly matched squads. But I do think that San Diego is due a win. I really do. I think that they'll pull one out against Austin this weekend.
And it's at San Diego, which means that Austin have to travel. It's a long way to travel.
Right.
I tend to sort of agree with you. I can see San Diego doing it. I think they've done it a little bit too late. Obviously lost Chris Robshaw, but they do have a good squad. So I could see them doing it, and I don't think they're looking at the game like, let's do Utah a favor either. I think they're like, okay, let's show the league what we got, and they'll go out and do a big performance. In the East Coast, probably most interesting game is NOLA are playing the Freejacks at the Freejacks. Freejacks haven't lost at home ever, I don't think. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
Correct.
So they'll be out to sort of keep that home record intact. And so it'd be a big game. NOLA needs to win all their games to put the pressure on us in Atlanta. But it also means if they go down there and get a result, which I think NOLA could do, you know, I think the Freejacks, although they had a bye week, didn't they? So, you know, they've had a bye week. They're well rested. We just spoke to Beaudein. You know, they're confident. They'll feel that they'll be coming off the bye week and looking good and feeling good. So, you know, I'm hoping obviously that Freejacks win, but I know that NOLA can. NOLA have traveled to places and won games. They beat Toronto last week and looked pretty good doing it. Although I'm going to go Freejacks. I'm going to go with Waaka. I think that they're fresh. They've got a bit to prove. And they, you know, is it the last? No, it's not the last game, is it? Before they lose their internationals. So I just see Freejacks doing it. I don't know why. They're just stubborn. They're just one of those stubborn teams at home, and you have to be on your mettle. Sort of like I don't know. They sort of take pride in that home record, and I think they'll be defending that to the end because that's what they're sort of going for now. Because their playoff contentionship is probably done, so now they'll just be having pride in that home form. What do you think, Mikey?
I'm going to agree. I'm going to say New England takes it, but there's a part of me that really thinks that NOLA will go up there and know that they have to win, especially since you all lost this past weekend.
Yeah.
That they're right in it, right? They're desperate for a win.
Yeah.
But so I think it'll be a really good game. I think it'll be one of those very close games that's within 5 points, something like that, right? Coming out to the wire. But I think that New England will persevere. I do.
And obviously the game that impacts the most is the New York-Toronto game at Toronto. Saying that, Toronto are the only team in the league that have given New York a proper hiding. And so it'll be interesting to see, you know, how much has changed. I think we've changed quite a lot the way we play. Toronto played us when we were in a vulnerable point of the season and we were still trying to figure things out, where we've come on a lot since then. But they have good players. We saw it last week when they ran NOLA close. They have the clientele to win big games, and you know they're a proud team as well. So they're going to lose a lot of players after this weekend to go and play for Canada. So I know that New York changed the fixture from a Sunday to Saturday, so they give them all their strength, all their players. I'll slip that in there just so you know that New York they want to play the best. Against my advice, I think we should have said play on Sunday, lose all your players, and we'll. But it's going to be a good game. I think it will be a good game, interesting game to see. A good judge of how far New York have come against a good Toronto outfit on their day. But you know, Toronto have got nothing to play for. Hopefully, for New York, that means that we can get a win and sneak by. And then obviously with NOLA playing Freejacks, if Freejacks beat NOLA, it'll give us the breathing room that we need to sort of. Just take the foot off the gas a little bit and chill out of the last couple of weeks breezing into the semi-finals.
Oof. I can't believe you said that, folks. I can't believe you're talking about taking your foot off the gas and chilling out right in the thick of the business.
I know. Well, that's what I'd like to happen, Mikey, but knowing bloody us, we won't be doing that. We'll be street fighting at the end of the corner for the whole, and we'll be on scooters on giving each other piggybacks, as always. As the New York way, we never make anything easy for ourselves.
No, but I do think that the game you all lost to Toronto and such a dramatically one-sided fashion was probably a one-off in that particular situation. I can't see something like that happening again. I do think that you all will be walking into town hurting a little bit as far as injuries go. I do think that Toronto will be up for it because it's the last game that a lot of their guys will be there before they head off for the internationals, like you said. But I think there's too much on the line for you guys. It's a must win for you. And for them, they're really at this point, like we said, playing for pride.
Hopefully a few guys are just thinking, let's stay fit. We've got a big game coming up to Canada, so let's just get through the game. No injury. That's what I'd be thinking if I was there, boys. And I'll try and put that in their head now. Another East Coast game, DC against Atlanta at Atlanta, and I expect Atlanta to win. I do, but I know DC are good and they can put in performances and turn it on. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. I expect Atlanta to win. By how much? I could easily see Atlanta hammering DC,
But at the same time, I could also see DC slipping one past an Atlanta team that had sort of taking things, you know, a bit for granted. They have that capability. They have the clientele to sort of do that, DC. I don't think it'll happen. I think what will happen is it'll be a bit of an arm wrestle that Atlanta will get on the right side of and probably win by about 2 scores. That's my prediction for that game.
I don't know. I do think 2 scores is a fair estimate. I think Atlanta will definitely win, whether or not. I don't think it'll be very close. It may be more than 2 scores, but I think it'll definitely be a minimum of a 2-score margin between the 2 teams for sure. I do. I think Atlanta's too strong of a team right now.
I'm going to throw an absolute spanner in the works here, because we've got the last game is LA against Seattle at Seattle.
And you're going to pick Seattle.
I'm going to go. I'm going to pick Seattle. And do you want to know the reason? I heard that LA have got a massive injury crisis on their hand. I hear they have like 18 players struggling at the moment. And I just think, you know, they're top of the league. They know that everyone's scrapping for number 2. They're just waiting for people to come back. And I think if Seattle are going to get anything from this season, it would be to beat LA, the best team in their conference, arguably the best team in the league at the moment, at home. And it'll be like the one game, like our cup final is this weekend. That's what I'd be saying as a coach. I'd say if we're going to beat them, this is the week to do it. We're going to go full ball. This is our cup final. This is to show our fans and our supporters that we are a serious rugby team and we'll be back next year. That's just me. That's just me, Mikey. But I think you have other thoughts.
Look, I want to be a buyer. I want to buy what you're selling. I do, because you're a good salesperson with this. This is a good, this is a really good pitch, Ben. If I were in that locker room and we were part of that team, 100%, the Giants are coming into town. You want to take them down, right? You want to. I don't know if they'll be able to, though.
I just don't think they can.
I think there's too much depth there. I do.
Yeah.
I think that they have. I know that they have an injury problem. I think all teams do at this point. But I just think they're going to have too much. I think it will be too much. They don't have a lot to play for, right? If they went in Seattle and lost, I don't think it would really make or break Los Angeles this season.
Exactly. That's why I don't think it will. That's why I think Seattle might do it, because it won't really matter to LA, and they know that they can rest all their guys one more week, be fresh.
I'm going to pick LA.
Yeah, I know you're going to pick LA. You always pick LA. You always pick LA. You always pick LA. You always go for the easy picks. I'm mixing it up. Seattle. And on that note,
I like it though. I do like it. And if
I know you do,
correct, I wouldn't be surprised.
On that note, Mikey, we will leave it there. And we will see you next week when I'll be gloating about how Seattle beat LA and no one else in the whole world called it. So tune in next week in the USA Rugby Clubhouse and we'll see what happens.